Good day, everyone. So before I will discuss my topic, let me first introduce myself. I am Rana Del Monica C. Plaza. I am a licensed professional teacher, but I am not currently yet working as a teacher. And my topic is about federal budgets, the tools of fiscal policy. So what will I going to discuss here is I will explain how does the government spend, how does the government tax, and what are budget deficit. So first, let's define what is federal budget. The federal budget provides an overview of the government's financial performance and fiscal policy for the coming years. The budget includes an assessment of the government revenues and expenses over a specific period. Just like our Philippine government, the US government spending plan or budget plan is a result of negotiation between the Congress and the President. And what is fiscal policy? Fiscal policy is the process by which government modify their spending levels and tax rates to control the economy, particularly the macroeconomic conditions. And there are two main tools that the government can use to influence the economy. And these tools is classified as the spending tools and the revenue tools. So spending tools, this refers to the entire government spending, while revenue tools, these are the taxes collected by the government. So the spending tools includes capital expenditure, current government spending, and transfer payments. So what is a capital expenditure? So this refers to the amount of money spent by the government on things like construction of schools, roads, and hospitals. This spending adds to the capital stock of a country and it has impact on countries' productivity. The next spending is the current government spending. This comprises the product and services that is provided regularly, like the services in the defense, in the health and education sector. And this spending is intended to boost a country's labor productivity. The next spending tool is the transfer payments. These are the payments made by the government through the social security programs. Transfer payments guarantee a minimum amount of income for low-income people. This is to provide means of the government to adjust the distribution of income in the society. This includes the unemployment and child benefits. So like state pension, housing assistance, income support, and tax credits. These are example of such benefits that is paid using transfer under the transfer payments. And it should be noted that these payments are not accounted in the GDP calculation because they are not linked to any input of production. Now, these spending tools can be categorized in a broader term. This can be categorized as government outlays, and it has two categories. It can be mandatory and discretionary. So mandatory, these are determined by ongoing government programs such as Social Security and Medicare. So it cannot be modified. Then the next is the discretionary outlays. These are the government spending that can be changed, can be modified when the government creates its annual budget. The next spending tools is the revenue tools. It could be indirect taxes and direct taxes. So indirect tax, these are tax imposed on specific goods and services like the groceries, the cigarettes, or the VAT that is imposed on goods and services. Then direct taxes, this is taxes imposed on profit, income, and wealth. This includes capital gain taxes, national insurance taxes, and other corporate taxes. The government can affect the economy by lowering income taxes for certain categories of people. So the federal income tax rate in the United States is determined using a scale that increases with income levels known as the progressive income tax system. So just like in our tax system in the Philippines, we are using progressive income tax system. It means that people with higher earnings pay a higher proportion of their income in taxes than people with lower incomes. Before 1913, the United States had no income tax. So they just generate revenue from import tariffs, but the revenue is decreasing. So that's why they look into another source of income, which is the revenue from income taxes. And to stabilize or enhance the economy, the government may raise or decrease its spending. So this is the extent and composition of spending by the government. So the government usually improves the economy by increasing spending, and this can happen in various ways. For example, they will construct highways, they will construct infrastructure to create jobs. And this increased spending by the government leads to increased aggregate demand because the people now have jobs that provide income that is used for private consumption and funding of personal lifestyles. The other spending is decreased spending. So this could be in the form of delays in getting promotion in the government job, reduce the construction or stop construction if necessary. And also it could be imposing an embargo on employment to save money from training, recruitment, wages, and salary. And another way of the government to restrict spending is to conserve money when the income is doing well. This is to have funds in during emergency crisis or to allocate the funds in another future project. And decreasing spending usually is occur when there is inflation. So what is affected by fiscal tools? So the government fiscal tools have influence on a variety of activities in the economy. This includes private investment, private consumption, purchases of goods and services, and net export. So these activities listed is called aggregate demand, and they have an impact on the country's productivity. As a result, or in other terms, fiscal policy refers to the premise that changes in government spending and taxation affect aggregate demand. So as industries create more to meet demand, aggregate demand influences the total product produced in the country. So fiscal policies can influence GDP. And the major goal of the government is utilizing fiscal policy that will improve or stabilize our GDP. Now let's talk about budget deficit. So what is a budget deficit? A budget deficit happens when spending exceeds revenues. This could affect a country's financial health. So meaning our spending is higher than what the tax is collected. The spending is higher than the tax collected. And then the national debt is formed by cumulative deficit, meaning deficit add to national debt. If the government if the government debt develop faster than GDP, the debt to GDP ratio may increase, and it result to unproportionally increase in debt to GDP ratio, and this result in destabilized economy. Inflation, or the constant rise in price level, is one of the key threats to budget deficit. A budget deficit in United States can force the Federal Reserve to release more money into the economy, and thus this feeds inflation. Budget deficit is a result of unexpected events or decisions, such as increasing spending in defense, increasing spending in infrastructure. And when the economy is booming, the budget deficit as a percentage of GDP may decline because there is less demand for government funded programs like unemployment benefits or the social security and medical medical benefits, or in our term in the Philippines, it's ayuda. Then the government can attempt to reduce the budget deficit by implementing fiscal policies that encourage economic growth, such as cutting government spending and raising the taxes. In fiscal year 2021, the federal deficit was $2,775 billion, and the gross federal debt increased by $1,490 billion. And this year, fiscal year 2022, the federal government in its latest budget has estimated a deficit of $1,415 billion. So why would this happen? Because they estimate only a tax revenue collected a total of 7.9 trillion, while their spending budget or estimate projection will be total to 9.3 trillion. So they will have a budget deficit because their spending is higher than their total revenue collected. So now let's have a glimpse of the Philippine government budget. So the budget for 2022 in the Philippine government is 5.24 trillion. It is 11.5% more than the budget for last year, 2021. The budget plan of the Philippine government is centered on three primary pillars of strategy. First, building resilience amid the pandemic, sustaining momentum toward recovery, and continuing the legacy of infrastructure development. The Department of Education received the most funding with 773.6 billion. The second is the Department of Public Works and Highways, 686.1 billion. And the budget for the Department of Interior and Local Government is 250.4 billion. So these are the top three agencies that receive highest funding. The Philippines is officially reported as having a debt to GDP ratio of 58% by the IMF, International Monetary Fund. The GDP to debt ratio is the ratio between a country's government debt and its gross domestic product. And according to the BCC, they estimated 1.65 trillion budget deficit for 2022. So there will be a budget gap and it will be financed by borrowing. And this will be amount to 2.2 trillion this year. And since we have already high debt total last year, this will climb to an outstanding total debt of the Philippines by the end of 2022 in the total amount of 13.42 trillion. So this 13.42 trillion outstanding debt by the end of 2022 will be equivalent to 60.8% of our GDP. That is a result of the government enacting economic policies. Government needs to borrow more while having a great budget deficit. However, we are not alone in this kind of problem. Nearby ASEAN nation also have this kind of problem, the high debt to GDP ratio. This is a result of taking additional loans to pay for their pandemic responses. They need funds to respond the pandemic. So the government has no choice but to borrow money. So therefore, putting our country on a sustainable fiscal path to produce favorable atmosphere for growth, opportunity, and prosperity. This all begins of having strong fiscal foundation. So the country will have better access to funds, more resources for public and private initiatives, higher consumer and corporate confidence, and stronger safety net to guide the country towards continuing economic progress if a government can implement an effective fiscal policy. And for me, a government with high debt or utang is tolerable as long as it has the ability to pay and as long as it is used for the right purpose. It is used for the welfare of the people. It is not being corrupted by the officials. So for us to have effective fiscal foundation, we need best leaders in our government. We need effective and capable economic managers in our country. So that's end my report. Thank you so much for listening. Have a good day, everyone.